Now, the IEC, as we reported a little earlier, is seeking the legal mandate to push the local government elections to next February. This is in line with a recommendation in a report compiled by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke. That report advised until a significant number of the population is vaccinated, holding polls would not only be dangerous in terms of the pandemic, but also may impede the holding of free and fair elections. Well, let's discuss what next now with former IEC Commissioner Tselane. He's also head of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. With all your many years running elections in South Africa, I'm sure you never encountered having to consider doing something as drastic as postponing a poll for a pandemic.
Absolutely. This was for the first time in the history of South Africa where an issue of this nature had to be considered. And I think it was appropriate for the Electoral Commission to commission a study or an inquiry through a person who understands the elections and who's also an expert in legal matters, Justice Moseneke, to lead the process.
Talk to us about the process now. It was quite interesting, Dikgang Moseneke being a former Deputy Chief Justice, the comment was made, well, he would know if this needs to go to the Constitutional Court first. And it seems that the IEC will start with the Electoral Court. But we've also heard stories that if you want to change the date of the elections, you have to change the Constitution. So just explain, in your understanding, what is the correct process and when actually the Constitution needs to be changed?
Well, Justice Moseneke gave us two options. The first one was that, the IEC could, together with the minister, approach Parliament. But in order for them to get a decision, they would have to get 75% of the members of the National Assembly supporting that decision, as well as 6 provinces supporting, a decision to postpone the elections. And the second option was to approach a competent court. Justice Moseneke, I think, was very careful not to mention or to dictate to the IEC which court they must actually approach. So remember that what has been happening over the past few months is that the IEC has actually been postponing the elections beyond the 90 days that is constitutionally stipulated. So it was never necessary for the Constitution to be changed. They approached the Electoral Court for the postponement of the elections beyond the constitutional stipulated period of 90 days.
We've seen a number of by-elections this past year as well, and despite the parlous state of many of our municipalities, people don't always vote to change who's running those municipalities. And I'm wondering what your view is on whether South Africans are gradually losing faith in the power of the poll.
No, not really. I mean, if you look at the number of, if you look at the percentage turnout in elections, you find that it is still very, very high in South Africa. If you look at the number of people who are registered, it is still very, very high. So I don't think people really have lost confidence in the capacity of the electoral system in South Africa to deliver what they require. Of course, from time to time, there are issues at the local level where those who are in authority are unable to meet their constitutional mandate that lead into service delivery protests and those kind of issues. But it does not really mean that people have really lost confidence in the electoral system in the country.
We do know that the numbers generally, though, are trending downwards.
Well, the numbers have gone slightly down, but compared to international standards, the voter turnout in South Africa is still relatively very high.
All right. Do you think that it really matters either way? If we hold the poll in February, it's just a few months later. I spoke to the DA earlier. They are going to very carefully look at this application because I think they are concerned on a point of principle. Do you have point of principle concerns about the election being postponed, or do you just think it's the right practical thing to do at the moment?
I'm on record as having said that I think it is appropriate for the elections to be postponed that the current circumstances dictate that they be postponed because it was not possible. It was not going to be possible to really have free and fair elections under the current circumstances where citizens are confined to their homes and political gatherings have been banned as a response, obviously, to the pandemic. So I think it is appropriate for the elections to be postponed under these circumstances. And I think the IEC has really taken the right decision.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens in court, and whatever happens, it has to happen very speedily. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was great to chat to you. That was Tselane of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa.